Sure. So the reason why I wrote that piece was it was based off of some of the initial work that Anthony Kosh had written in the National Post, and which was an excellent piece. And I saw your episode with him as well, which was very insightful. But building on some of that, I wanted to look at why, especially in light of the conversation that we on Canada's New Right have been having, especially in contrast with Sean Speer and a few others from the Harper era, it's looking at why do we talk about social and cultural issues in the way that we do on the conservative side in Canada. So the the divergence between the two groups has been one that wants to stick mainly to economic issues, pocketbook issues, the real dollars and cents of Canadian policy. And, on the new right side, a lot of the without diminishment writers, myself being among them, want to look at Canada through the lens of social policy, identity policy, cultural policy in Canada. All that to say, at the root of that is the origins of Pierre Trudeau. And, over the holidays, I was reading the Coots Diaries, which is a fascinating book. It's the real day-to-day, what it's like to work for a prime minister or a political leader. And, you see their ups and downs and moods, what interests them and what doesn't interest them. And Pierre Trudeau was not that interested in economic policy in the 70s. What he was more interested in was, as Anthony Kosh and others and myself have argued, was remaking Canada in his own image. And I would argue he was very effective in doing that. With the constitutional battles that happened in the 70s, leading up to 1982, with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Canada then became defined by that document. So when we talk about or how a lot of people view Canada today, started with the origins of that document. So now, looking at that conversation, there's a lot of conservatives who don't want to touch any of those issues because of the long-lasting legacy of Pierre Trudeau. And what I wrote in my piece was that, there's a reason why we don't want to, and there's a reason why conservatives often define things in terms of shield and sword issues. There are issues that we can win on and be aggressive with, and there are other issues with which we have to back away and play defense on the whole time. But a lot of younger Canadians are sick of playing defense. A lot of younger conservatives want to play offense and say, hey, we actually care about our national identity. We care about Canadian culture. We care about the social fabric of our country. And these are the things that are, most important to us, especially when you look around the country and see the natural state of things. But the piece that I wrote looks at, conservatives shied away from these issues because they were shield issues to them. They were issues on which they viewed the country as not being on side, or they weren't vote getters in their opinion. So after, Brian Mulroney takes over from Pierre Trudeau and tries to do Meech Lake and Charlottetown, and, the reverberations politically from that were massive. You had the creation of the Bloc Québécois. You had the Reform Party establish itself in Western Canada, and the Liberals governed for a decade plus with Chrétien and Martin. So conservatives institutionally viewed those issues as ones that we ought to shy away from. And during the Harper era, I would argue that they were right to do that. Canadians, I think, wanted a steady hand at the tiller. They wanted an economic professional, an administrative prime minister, and they got that with Stephen Harper. And I would argue that's a bit of what's appealing to Canadians about Mark Carney. So the piece as a whole is looking at why conservatives wouldn't talk about those things in the first place because of the legacy of Pierre Trudeau. And now conservatives, especially, on the millennial front, and younger Canadians and conservatives want to talk about those issues and don't view them as the jurisdiction of the charter-loving liberals and Laurentians that have been deciding every social issue for our whole political careers.